Hey everybody, Derek Tam Scott is here to help us answer the question, WTF, what the F is going on Bring a Trailer? We're going to talk about the predictions that we made on the last episode. Turns out Derek himself sold one of those cars. Wait till you find out which one. We've got all new predictions. This is Bid Nerds. The bidding starts now. Bid Nerds is your daily YouTube car game show, where we predict the online auction results of the most interesting cars on Bring a Trailer, Cars and Bids, Haggerty Marketplace, and more. It's just like the Price is Right game show. Play along and see if you can beat the nerds. Boom! It's time. This is happening. It's a live episode. We didn't think we were going to be able to do one today, but we are here for you because we love you guys. My name is John Polnik. I am your host tonight for Bid Nerds, along with my partner, Michael Deeb. I'm in downtown Las Vegas, like my hat says, here in the Rami studio in the Container Park. I guess they're going to be starting the punk rock bowling festival will be going here, so it might get loud in here. We'll see what happens if we're done with it before that starts. Michael Deeb in San Francisco, how are you? And how was Cars and Cafe in San Francisco today, buddy?
Oh man, JP, listen, you and I are buddies. We tend to lightly tease each other, but we never give each other shit. I wish you would have come out to see how good the turnout was. Pacino, San Francisco, is opening a new point on the water by the seaplanes in Mill Valley. They're going to build a restaurant there in the next year, which will be our hub. But in the meantime, they have an Airstream that they're turning into a coffee truck. And we parked, I kid you not, JP, we had over 60 cars today on the first one, including a beautiful bright yellow 1972 Volkswagen Thing. And we had a Rothmans liveried 911 Dakar there and a whole host of cars in between. It was a really amazing turnout. Shout out to Pacino, San Francisco, the owners, Marguerite and Cher, and their partner, Sean Manchester, who's the guy that owns the Airstream. And Sean is the one who I collaborated with. I just want to thank everybody who helped put this together. It was an outstanding first shot. And if we are building from there, JP, I'm excited for the month that you might be out here and you can see what we're doing in San Francisco will hopefully very quickly rival what you guys are doing in Vegas, because it was awesome. Cars Un Cafe San Francisco. Follow us on the gram, and if you're anywhere in Northern California, come out to the last Sunday of the month and come down and see us. It was a really, really great show. It was awesome. Well,
good job. Glad that it went well. The Vegas show was off the hook. I was shocked how many people came out on holiday weekend. We had great weather, so thanks to everybody that came out to Cars and Cafe. Patootie is barking at the intruders here. Yeah, man. I can't wait to get out there for the San Francisco one. I think I'll do it in August when it's really hot here. That's what makes more sense. So, yeah. So good job. All right. Tonight we've got a special guest. We teased that we've got Derek Tam Scott. He's waiting in the wings, in the green room, as it were. We'll bring him on in just a second. But first, we want to shout out to our good friends at Godden Porsche and Godden Classic of Las Vegas. They brought amazing cars out this morning as well. Steve brought out Gary's GT2 RS Wysock black on black with it was just so sick. But lots of great cars there. All the cool air-cooled stuff was there, of course. But those guys are awesome. If you're looking for an air-cooled car or parts for one, Godden Classic is the place to go. And then you're going, hey, they were almost on time. Anthony Vieira, he's in the chat already saying, these boys need new watches. No, the watches work. Get them serviced at Smiths, because if you have a fine Swiss watch, you got to get that watch serviced at Smiths. If you need a fine Swiss watch, you got to get it at Smiths. So give our friends a call at Smiths if you need either of those two things. Yeah.
Anthony's parents, George and Pam, drove out in their Targa GTS and
nice,
an hour and a half into the city to come to Cars and Cafe this morning. And then my buddy Jeff Harley, who works at Ferrari San Francisco, we took them and another guy named Peter, and we went to Larkspur and had lunch. But JP, without further ado, we do not have a third nerd tonight. We actually have a very special guest. I am so happy to announce that Derek Tam Scott is going to join us on the show this evening.
He's right there.
Derek.
There he is.
Derek.
Look at that.
Look at that. Making it look sunny and balmy in San Francisco. Derek, talk to us. How are you, man?
I am great, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So I have to admit, I've actually been, this can sound ridiculous, but I've been pining to get you on the show for about a year. And I always thought that I would need an introduction from Jason or an introduction from Tazio to shake hands with you in person and make your acquaintance, invite you on the show. But anyway, since we wound up covering one of your cars, which we'll get to in a minute, I just reached out to Derek and found super receptive and excited to come on the show and defend his honor and what they did with this great car. So thank you, Derek, for joining us. It's really cool to have you on. How's everything going?
It is my pleasure.
With the new venture? We know you host BTS with DTS, behind the scenes with Derek Tam Scott, where you present really interesting cars and do fantastic. The cinematography and the narrative on those are really great. You've been doing Carmudgeon. What do you have, like hundreds of episodes with Jason Camissa that Haggerty underwrites, and now you have a brick and mortar sales business with Tazio Otis and yet another partner who kind of hammer home the marketing wing. But you guys are selling really cool high end cars and doing a fantastic job of it. Something the likes we haven't really seen in the Bay Area in a while. So talk to us about your new venture.
Sure, yeah. So we started a new dealership. For years and years, I worked for other people and decided it was time to start my own thing finally. And so, Tazio Otis is obviously a really qualified person to do that with. His father is kind of a local legend, and together they run the Patrick Otis shop, which is a Ferrari shop that specializes in a lot of vintage cars and some modern ones as well. And so together we have, pretty good networks. And then we have a third partner, Robert Epley, who's really strong at sort of marketing stuff and started Vault Auto Club, which is in the Bay Area, pretty well known, and does a bunch of events. So it's been, all of 6 months, and it's obviously scary to start like that, but it's going really well. And we're really impressed with how positive the response has been so far.
Yeah,
Oh, yes.
that's
Here's
really
some
cool.
of our previous work.
You guys also, although we didn't cover it, it was on my short list of cars. You guys also just sold an E46 M3, if I'm correct, with Laguna Seca blue with low miles. I don't even know if it was a competition car, but it was a manual car, slick roof, and you guys sold that car for over $100,000 on the same day as the car we covered last week. Talk to me about that result.
Yes.
Were you surprised by $112,000 was the hammer, right?
Yeah. So
That's
this car,
that's a big number.
it surprised us a little bit, but also didn't. I mean, we were expecting a lot for the car, and the whole story with the car is that Laguna Seca Blue is this color that everybody freaks out over. And they made 1,128 coupes for the US market in this color, and 70% of them have gray or black interiors, maybe more actually. And so to find one that doesn't have a black interior is rare to begin with, or gray, sorry. And this one has the cinnamon interior. And there were 19 cars in this color combo that came to the US. 14 of them were manuals, and one of them is a slick top. So it is the only one in this color combo that came to the US without a sunroof, with a stick.
Badass. That's so, and you guys knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, we found it with the original owner. It's 29,000 miles, and he ordered it that way. Also, manual seats, which is another thing that those people really care about, BMW nerds. And so we saw this thing. We was like, we have to have it because it's just going to break the internet, which it in fact did. So we're very happy with the outcome.
Yeah, I mean, certainly a high watermark for the model over the last few years. You guys can hold your head up high. You're off to a good start and making a big impression on the market. So awesome. Congratulations on that. And then thanks for coming on with us. Really appreciate you jumping on short notice, and we'll talk about your car in a minute.
All right. Well, we've got questions to answer. We opened up the show with a big question. What the F is going on BAT? We're seeing all kinds of crazy results. I'm sure you've noticed that as well. Derek, we'll be getting your input on that and your opinion. If nothing's going on Bring a Trailer and Cars and Bids, we'll find out in just a second. But first we're going to go back and we're going to reconcile the predictions that we made on the last episode, your car being one of them, but your car is not the first one we're going to talk about. Michael D., what was the first car that we made a prediction on the last episode? What do we got?
JP, arguably the only other most interesting car from last week besides Derek's car was this 1973 Porsche 911T that has been converted to a custom Speedster and was offered for sale on P-Car Market. Our car started life as a 911T Targa, And in 1990, with 74,000 miles, it underwent a Speedster style transformation, incorporating a correct 964 Speedster windscreen, which is the same, JP assures me, it's the same windscreen and hardware that would have gone into the 89 Speedster. The car was also fitted with a 3.6 liter flat six engine with a G50 gearbox and a limited slip differential. So not only is this car, look interesting, and I mean, we all kind of described it as being awkward to the eye because nobody does F body convertibles, not even Porsche. So just looking at this car, it's a little awkward, but this car probably goes. I mean, it probably moves. They did sort of a custom clamshell. It's a narrow body. And we just wondered, with all the hardware, John, you talked about like 30 years ago, the parts for these cars, would have been available and it wouldn't have been cost prohibitive to do it. Today, you can't find that windscreen. And even if you could, it would be almost unobtainium by a price consideration. So we wondered where this car would hammer. And then we also wondered, Derek, where this car would wind up in the deal tank, because none of us thought for a second this car would sell at hammer. So without further ado, Derek, I started the bidding at $96,911, and I was the high man by far. JP, you undercut me by $33,000, coming in at $63,911. We had Max. What's the name of Max's shop, JP? Can I put you on the spot?
Yeah, Retroworks Garage.
Max from Retroworks Garage in Los Angeles. He came. He was our guest tune-in nerd, and he said $69,911. And Buddha, Mike Myers, Queers for Gears on Instagram. Mike Myers was in studio with JP, and he came in at $63,910. So, Derek, we're going to totally put you on the spot. A really obscure car, an F-body Speedster, done to a high level, but certainly 30 years ago. It's got the motor to match. But, how do you gauge the demand? The photos and the presentation were terrible. The car was also on P-Car Market. We'll get to that in a minute. But just to put you on the spot, what do you think happened when this car hit hammer just a couple of days on P-Car Market, just a couple of days ago? Where would you guess the hammer was on this car?
So I have to do the sort of fully unvarnished thing, which is that, the guts are kind of good and the ingredients are good, but the sort of execution looks a little bit casual. And so I think that these sort of estimates in the 60s are kind of appropriate. If it would have been really beautiful, then maybe people would have gone a little higher. But, I agree that these 60s numbers are kind of right. So I'll just hit it at 70.
70 is not a bad guess. All right, JP. Couple of interesting things here. So Derek, we all agreed that this car would hammer under 100, and then we all thought that somewhere between in the mid $150,000 range would be where this car would wind up in the deal tank. We call it the chum bucket because we love P-Car Market so much. So our car hammered at $89,000, where it failed to sell on just 14 bids. It is sitting in the deal tank in the chum bucket with an asking price of $200,000. Derek, after you stop, Derek, after you pick yourself up off the ground and stop laughing, what do you read the tea leaves for us? And what do you think is going to happen here? A $200,000 asking price is just out of control. Excuse me for a second. I got to shut the dogs up.
The saying that we have in the industry is that the market is not ready for the owner of this car to sell. I mean, that's just a very optimistic number. I think that the car could really do well if they just cleaned up the execution. I mean, the interior has a whole bunch of incorrect stuff, and I think Porsche guys will pay up for really nice stuff, but this interior really lets the car down. And, the control panel for the roof or whatever we're looking at that was made out of plywood just doesn't fly in the $200,000 department, and that's what makes it lower.
Yeah.
Bravo.
So, yeah, I mean, I think that they're going to have the car for a while.
Yeah, I
JP.
mean, I'm just pissed as usual. You guys know how much P-Car Market just continues to tick me off. P-Car Market just straight up sucks. This was a complete waste of everyone's time, P-Car Market. Why did you bother doing this? You knew what the guy's reserve was. So like Derek says, the market's not ready for this seller, right? Okay, so PCAR Market, they're supposed to be professionals. They get a guy that calls them up or sends them an email and says, hey, I've got this car. They describe it. They send them all the pictures. And then PCAR Market says, all right, what do you want the reserve to be? And he's like, $200,000. I mean, at that point, PCAR Market's going to be going, all right, dude, when you put the crack pipe down, are you ready to have a real conversation? And if the guy doesn't like come down off of whatever the hell he's taken at that point and have a real conversation of what this car is actually going to be, bring or potentially bring, why would PCAR Market even bother listing this? Because all the people were looking, there was a lot of like nice comments. Like I said in the last episode, I actually like this car. This would be a lot of fun. It has a lot of great ingredients, like Derek says. That was a great way to put it. But I mean, maybe $100,000 you could make this car, but twice as much. I mean, this car was DOA. It never had a chance. No one is going to pay $200,000 for this car, and PCAR Market should have known that. Derek, what do you think of the responsibility of the platform accepting this listing, knowing that the reserve was so absurdly unreasonable?
Yeah, I mean, that's always a tough conversation. And of course, being as a dealer, that I have to navigate it all the time. Everyone says, my car's worth this much money, or it's worth more because I own it, or, they have this artificial sense of the car's value. And it's my job to say, look, here's the data that shows that that's not the case. And, you have to point to real things. You don't attack the car. You just say, look, if people are willing, you blame it on the market, blame it on consumers, blame it on something, but, you don't want to attack the person or the car. But it's your responsibility to sort of be in line with reality and represent reality and use your expertise to do that. And of course, Bring a Trailer does the opposite, where they'll really beat people up because they want to see the car transact, even if it's a little under market, because otherwise they don't get paid. And this is obviously the opposite problem, where they're just like, yeah, whatever you want, we'll run it and pray, or whatever their thought is.
Yeah, we'll just waste our customers' time. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, so okay, you try to reason with the seller, and they're just not reasonable. At what point do you let the fish off the hook and just go, all right, you're back in the sea, little swimmer? What do you do? I mean, how do you deal with that? Or do you just say, okay, I will accept this listing and give it a whirl?
It really depends what it is and how badly you want it. If this thing is kind of magical and you think it'll just have some kind of other benefit, where it's like raising awareness of your business or whatever it is it's going to be, or you're just on the outside hope that you could make some money, then it's worth trying. But generally speaking, for something where you're like, I'm not that into this car, or it has a lot of excuses, or I think people are going to tear it apart in the comments or whatever, then you just have to say, look, I'm sorry, but good luck to you, but I don't think we can help you. And the willingness to fire a customer is you got to have that, I think, at times. Otherwise, you end up with these situations where people are making fun of you on the internet, like we are right now.
Yeah, I mean, how does respect for the customers on your platform play into the equation, right? I mean, you've got all this traffic coming to your website. You're telling everybody, hey, we've got cars that you want to bid on, and like, I'm someone that might have been interested in this car, and if I was liquid at the time, like, I may have bid on this car. This is a car I actually may have gone after, and if I was sitting there spending an hour or 2 hours at the end of this auction getting ready to bid, and then PCAR Market takes my bid and holds the deposit for 2 weeks on a car that there was no chance ever in hell of getting. What kind of show of respect or lack of respect does that show to the customers of PCAR Market, in your opinion, Derek?
I mean, they holding for 2 weeks this
They
deposit?
do sometimes.
They do, yeah. Sometimes,
I've
not all the time, but sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, it takes a while to get your money back.
I don't like that.
Yeah.
No, it's
Scary.
really weird. It is weird.
Well, yeah, but that was the question, though. Like, what do you think that says about how PCAR Market feels about their potential customers, the people that are actually paying?
I mean, that just feels like some kind of sketchy shell game where, like, oh, the musical chairs, the music has stopped and there's no chairs left, and sorry, we lost your money or whatever. I mean, I'm not saying anything like that's going to happen, but the fact that they sit on it for 2 weeks was really alarming to me.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I think this is really, really, really ishy of PCAR Market. They continue to do stupid stuff like this. If there was no chance of this car ever selling, they had to know that. They had to know that at $200,000 in chum bucket, this car's DOA on arrival. So what they knew is that a bunch of their customers, people that they rely on, to pay their bills are going to make bids. They have no chance of getting the car, and P-Car Market is going to be able to sit on that money for a week or 2 weeks or even 48 hours or whatever the heck it winds up being. That their customers
Atlantic
are out
City.
that money. Yeah, it's like, are they running down to the
Unsavory.
stock market or putting some money on Bitcoin? I mean, we've definitely seen other companies do ish like that. I would not put that past P-Car Market. We have no evidence that that's in fact what they're doing. This is just pure speculation. But they do so much crazy stuff like this that it makes me think, yeah, why wouldn't they do something like that? I would not put that past them.
Scares me.
Yeah, right.
I have one question for Derek. Derek, when you look at a car like this, obviously this guy is at least attempting to sell the car. Now that it's been on P-Car Market where it FTS'd at less than 50% of the asking price, no matter how unrealistic the asking price is, Derek, do you think a car like this is burnt in the marketplace, or do you suspect that we could, or potentially this car could wind up in a live auction, or it can wind up on BAT somewhere? What's your feeling on when a car runs, doesn't sales, it's so unique and niche like this car actually is, that it becomes its own worst comparable result, that the car, in my opinion, this car is totally burnt. Yeah, I think this car is burnt for the next year. Do you? I mean, without fixing some things up like you talked about.
The car kind of does it to itself, right? I mean, it just needs to be at a higher level to get a better number, and it's okay for the car to exist like this. It just needs to be priced appropriately, and I think it shows a fundamental misunderstanding on the part of the owner to think that someone is willing to pay $200,000 for this car, because Porsche guys are just really specific about what it takes to get them excited, and if you misread that or don't really fully understand what drives those people, then you're just insulting them. Yeah. So I mean, I agree, the car is it's just going to sit around and not be able to sell until somebody comes around, the person who owns it, in terms of what it's worth.
Yeah, and for just a matter of reference too. I mean, Anthony just reminded me, and I wanted to bring this up, so I'm glad he mentioned it in the comments. In the deal tank right now is a real Speedster for $190,000. So like, this is an actual factory Speedster with like 30-something thousand miles. So it's like, what on earth is he thinking that he's going to get $200,000 for a weird fake one? P-Car Market. One more time, I just gotta use the graphic because I built it. So P-Car Market sucks. We gotta get P-Car Market to sponsor that segment. All right, what do you guys think of the results of this little bastardized Speedster car? Is the seller just totally out to lunch thinking that he's going to get $200,000? Did P-Car Market not only screw their audience, but screw the seller really by even accepting this car as a listing? And did they waste everyone's time? Or am I, as usual, just being way too hard on P-Car Market? I know everybody knows that I'm an a-hole, but I mean, call me out on this one. Tell me where I'm wrong. We love hearing from you guys in the comments. Let us know what you think. And let's move on to the next car that was on the list. Ooh, this next one we're excited about. Derek, you're going to be excited about this one.
Oh my God. All right. So I have to start by busting myself. JP, what we're talking about is this gorgeous 1969 DeTomaso Mangusta that was listed on Bring a Trailer as a premium listing last week by OTS and Company out of Berkeley, California. Now, we claim that we never do any research. And so my cousin Mark selected this car saying how beautiful it was and told us to cover it. So I put it on the list. And then as I'm reading it for the first time, as I'm introducing the car, I see the OTS and Company, and I immediately thought it was Patrick Otis's car, just completely shedding a blind eye to my friend Tazio and Derek, who just opened their new company called OTS and Company, and not dawning on me that it was their car and not Patrick Otis's. So anyways, JP, we love the car. I introduced the car, talked a little bit about the design and the motor and all this stuff. I remember handing it over to you, and you were just talking about the listing as being pure perfection. The car was outstanding. The photography is insanely good. And the car is peerless. Like, first of all, we rarely see Mangustas. If I remember correctly, because it's in the listing, it's one of 401 built during a 4-year period. And this is arguably the most beautiful one to come to market. There have been 2 high watermarks over the last handful of years. Both of those cars were red, but this car in this dark gray metallic with the sort of cognac colored interior just screams Italian high design, and the lines are beautiful. So I started the bidding. looking at those two high watermarks for those red cars that were around $400,000, but sort of recognizing that the market is soft and not fully understanding if even the BAT audience, how well they would receive a beauty like the nicest Mangusta. It's not a Vallelunga, and it's not a whatchamacallit, a Pantera. So I just wondered how it would be received. So I started the bidding at $302,000. JP took the under at 290. We had Max at 287, and we had Buddha at 360. And Buddha turned out to be the smart one. So Derek, this car wound up doing fantastic. The hammer price was $389,000 where it sold. JP, did you catch this stat? 80 bids. The listing from the moment the clock started, I think this car ran for like a half an hour. Derek, tell us, we're just going to hand it over to you and let you talk a little bit about acquiring the car, getting it photographed, what you maybe expected, as candidly as you can be, versus where the hammer was. Obviously, it sold, so I have to think that you guys are all pleased with that result, but certainly a high watermark over the last couple of years. And just, way to just hammer it home, because those other red cars sold at live auctions to really a closed audience. This car was done at a high watermark on the largest auction platform in the world. Congratulations on the sale. Tell us what you can.
Sure. So it was a really interesting experiment for us because, the car comes from a great consignor who's owned it for a dozen years and really sort of loved it and took good care of it and showed it and really did all the things that a good enthusiastic owner should do. And as we were trying to sort of comp this car and figure out what it should be, there's a bunch of cars that sell around 200, and then there's a bunch of cars that sell at 400. And so we were like, okay, so it's either worth 2 or 400. We're not really sure. And so, we tried to reserve it kind of somewhere in the middle of that range because we're trying to be realistic. Like you said, the market is softer than it used to be, and try to be realistic about getting the car moved along. And, the sellers has had enough time with it and decided he was sure he wanted to sell it. And so we did the best we could in terms of presentation with photography, and obviously the car plays a huge role in that. It's a great color combination. It's been, really well restored and shown in a bunch of places, and just a generally high quality example. Certainly the highest quality example that's sold on Bring a Trailer, which is not a high bar just because there haven't been that many. I mean, and the others were sort of just old cars, and this one is a really beautifully presented and restored example. So, we had this sort of number in mind, and the car was sitting at $180,000 5 minutes before it ended. And we were all like, oh no, it's just going to tank. And so he's like, okay, lower the reserve a little bit more. And we're like praying and all that stuff. And then it kind of just went insane and went on for, I don't know how long it was, 30 or 45 minutes. But the comments started to have the guys who were like, I went to lunch and came back and it's still going. I took the oil pan off my car and I came back and it's still going because I wanted to see what it sold for. And it's still, you guys are still at it. And, that guy who won it ultimately ended up doing kind of a sizable knockout bid at the end. I think it was like $15,000 plus, maybe a $17,000 increment. And that was kind of the bid that killed the auction, or, killed the other guy's enthusiasm off. And so he sort of ended up with it. And I talked to him for like 90 seconds afterwards. And he's like, yeah, I'm in Greece with my family and we dinner, and I just was in the middle of dinner bidding, and I just wanted to be done and go back to dinner. So that's why I did that.
What a Greek response too, by the way. My grandmother was cooking, and I had to get back. I had to put my phone down.
He's not from Greece. He's on a yacht in Greece. I mean, come on, let's be honest. It's probably Chamath.
Yeah, he's from the East Coast or something like that. So, he's overjoyed that he won it, but it was hard won certainly. And the guy who was the underbidder I spoke to before it ended. And he was trying to figure out ways to make the deal go as smoothly as possible, and he was like, I hope to talk to you in the future. And he went a lot farther than I thought he was going to go, and I was very appreciative for that. But I spoke to both of them on the phone within an hour of the auction ending, one before and one after. But it's always a good sign if you have something that's ending and you're talking to people who are actually expressing interest. It prevents one of those situations where the car ends and nothing happens at the end, which is exactly the opposite of what happened here, obviously. So everyone's, I think, pretty happy.
When you talk a little bit candidly about lowering the reserve, and then obviously you mentioned you might have lowered it again, but did the final result ultimately exceed the first reserve? Can we say that it was basically a big success?
Yes.
That's fantastic. So everybody was happy. Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Yep.
Well, congratulations, man. Well done.
Although it landed
Beautiful.
within a few $1,000s of what the guy had it insured for. And of course, the guys in this business, and maybe not
Yeah.
even in this business, know that the cars are always insured for like the most number you could ever expect to get for the car. And he was like remarkably close with his sort of agreed insurance value for the car for what it ended up selling for.
That makes sense. Well, fantastic. Love the car. Love the photography, and the presentation was excellent. And the result
we have
was
a great
outstanding.
photographer.
Yeah, and then with that bid count and that high watermark, I really hope that really brings attention to your new venture, and get you going. I hope the phone, as they say, continues to ring off the hook, although nobody uses the phone anymore.
Derek, you mentioned that that you acknowledge that the market has softened up a little bit, and we opened up the show with the idea of what the F is going on BAT, and all the auction sites, really. Does this car represent, like, where do you think the high water mark for this car would have been if, say, it sold at the height of the market, call it a year and a half ago, or 2 years ago? What difference do you think? How big is the delta there? And then also, I'd love to get your take on the idea that you'd mentioned that the owners had this car for a dozen years, which is the right spot to be, right, when you're selling something like this. I think a lot of people got into cars like this 3, 4, 2 years ago, and they bought in the height. And now they're all sweating because they're trying to offload their cars a couple of years later after the market's taken a crap. Whereas this particular seller, someone a little bit more savvy, they're not, in it for just the 5 seconds, as it were. They've been the steward of this car for a dozen years. They probably bought this car for $50,000, $80,000, $100,000 12 years ago. I mean, what is your take on all of that?
Yeah, so run me back to the first question, which was where would this car have sold before?
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, it was a little long-winded question there.
No worries. I was thinking while you were talking. I think what's happening right now is that really exceptional stuff, and this car is an example of that, still continues to sell strongly. And so I'm not sure that the high water point for this car a few years ago would have been that different. It's just that what was happening a few years ago was that everything was selling for kind of nuts numbers. And now, these guys with money will come out of the woodwork when something really special and unrepeatable comes out. And that's really the key metric that we look for, is unrepeatability. And this car, with the quality of its restoration and the color combination and the rarity and, whatever the list of things that are really extraordinary about the car, had the power to draw that kind of energy that was present kind of all over the market 3 years ago, whereas now that energy only exists at the really sort of special parts or corners of the market. And so we still see really strong results. And I think if you guys are doing this a couple times a week, you're seeing that really extraordinary cars still sell strongly. And then there's a whole bunch of sort of average cars that sort of they kind of fall flat on their face sometimes. Sometimes people get lucky and they sell kind of reasonable numbers. But it's really the special stuff that makes people excited and gets them to sort of just open the checkbook in the same way that they did 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, what motivates a guy on a yacht in the Mediterranean is a little different than the average Joe that just wants a run-of-the-mill 911. The fact that he's had the car for as long as he's had it, he's got to be happy over the long term, regardless of whether or not there may have been a higher watermark or not. The fact that he bought this thing 12 years ago, this has to be a great return. If you're looking at it from a pure investment
I think it did well.
point of view.
Equity.
Equity. And I think the thing was, he probably wasn't. He was like, I want this car. I want to take it here. I want to show it here. I want to drive it. He put 5,000 miles on it, which is not trivial considering the car had 19,000 miles when he bought it. The hypothesis was that was actually true mileage. So I mean, he put 20% of the car's miles on it. Even though 5,000 is not that much for a dozen years. But he drove it around and showed it a bunch and stuff. I mean, he bought it because he loved it, and he did kind of everything he could with it, and now he's moving on. So, it's not approaching from the perspective of an investment necessarily for him, I think, but it's, a happy byproduct.
Fantastic. Well, we love seeing that. And what do you guys think of the results of this spectacular auction? Do you think that was, in fact, a high watermark for this particular model, or do you think it would have brought more money if they had tried to sell it a year or two ago? Let us know in the comments below. Speaking of comments and everyone hanging out, the Nerd Herd is rocking it tonight. We've got a lot of new people coming in, probably because of Derek. Thank you for joining us tonight. If you haven't hit the thumbs up button, please do so. Also, give us a like and subscribe to the channel if you're new to the channel, and also shout out to the Nerd Herd, guys like Chris and Anthony. You guys, I love that. Deeb, one of the things that I love seeing in the chat while I'm trying to produce this darn show is that new guys are coming into the chat group, and Chris is like, just like, hey, how you doing? He's like our ambassador at Walmart, right? He walks in and is like, are you looking for toothpaste? What can I do? So Chris, you rock. Thanks for welcoming the new Nerd Herd members. Chris Carbine, of course, and just everyone else in the herd is great.
Just so Derek knows, he's got fans in the chat, right? So we've got the chat going, and there's a guy named David Van that's like, yo, Derek, I watch almost every Curmudgeon. So shout out to David Van, who wants to say hi to Derek Tam Scott. That's just fantastic. Thank you, Derek, again for joining us. JP, this next car is really interesting. And I have to say, as much as I think I know something, like a little something about almost every Porsche, there's some cars that are just hard to quantify, like where the value is. So I'm thrilled we have Derek on, because we're going to totally put him on the spot with this next car, JP. Let me know when you're ready.
We are ready to go. Let's do it.
All right. So, Derek, you probably noticed, but our buddies down at Symbolic listed this pretty awesome 1984 Porsche 911 SC RS as a premium listing on BAT last week. Essentially 20 of these cars were built. And although 84 was when the 3.2 was released, this was an early Group B homologation special that was essentially the highest spec SC of all time, being that it still had a 3-liter motor, although these cars were rumored to make 270 horsepower, and Porsche always underrated their cars as far as what the power was. A completely different build and engine spec. It's got the wide body kit and lightweight front and rear valance and rally lights and roll bar and all these incredible things. This is a Weissach special, and there's only a few of them in the world, and almost all of them have some racing history, some provenance that you could go through. This car is no exception to that rule. There are wonderful photos and a listing of all the cars and events that this car participated in period photography. So if the new owner wanted to copy one of the vintage liveries that it raced in, you could execute that, because this car's got great documentation. There are a handful of cars, Derek. I know there's one in a collection in Reno, and then we had access to one through our collector's garage through the Broad Arrow Group and Haggerty Marketplace. And both of those cars were privately sold and never raced. So those cars are essentially like brand new. Rumor has it, and I don't want to say too much because I don't know how public that car was, but the asking price on that car was in the $2 million range. Our car showed up here on BAT at a Symbolic, something that was recently imported into the United States. And I just could not find comps, Derek, to try and guesstimate the value on this car. So I just started the bidding at $911,000. JP took the under by $100,000 and gave us $800,911. Max came in over me at $959,911. And Buddha took the over further still, giving us $1,000,911. Derek, you may have watched this one because it's such an interesting car. But do you have any idea where this car might have hammered on Bring a Taylor last week after being listed for like 11 days as a premium listing?
Yeah, so cars like this are always tough because there's just not a lot of comps. And so then you have to start and think about what is the car and how does it relate to stuff that you do know the value of. And the thing about the impact bumper 911, which is of course that it's a really mainstream, happy, like enthusiast car that has a big appeal. But there was never a factory RS version other than kind of this little sidebar thing that most people don't know about. There's obviously an RS version of the long hood, and there's an RS version of the 964 and the 993. And so you say, well, okay, what are those things worth? And, a great touring long hood is, I don't know, $750.
Right.
And a lightweight is in the sort of low millions. So you say, okay, here's some information from the neighborhood. And then you look at 964, which is a generation after that. And you say, okay, a narrow body RS is worth $300,000-$400,000, and 3.8, if you can find one of the 55 that was built, is anywhere from like low millions to $2 million for a really great unused car. And you say, how does this car compare to those? It's an impact bumper car, but it's kind of obscure. And a lot of it, I think, also depends on how usable the car is on the street. Anything that can't be used on the street immediately removes a vast percentage of the people who might be buying these cars because, not
It's a
everyone
great
is going
point.
to go spend seven figures on a car that you can only use on the track.
Yep.
And so if the car has a streetable interior and, you balance that with the fact that it's kind of obscure, I think that this $1 million place is probably the right place to think about its value. Maybe it breaks more depending on how much history it has. But I think that on Bring a Trailer, it's a little tough because a lot of people won't know what it is. And this also depends. Porsche guys are perfectionists, and so if the car has any sort of like excuses or question marks, then immediately everyone's can't be too vulgar, but their tumescence decreases as a
Yeah.
result of sort of questions. And
Yep.
so I would want to know the answers to that stuff, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was a sort of slightly softish result because nobody knew what it was.
Yeah.
So you
So
need
do
a
you
number.
want to? Yeah, give us a number. Just throw one out there. Just spit.
800.
800 is, man, that's a really good guess. So I gave us our bids, JP. It's interesting to note that this car just didn't make it, John. It was bid to 756,000, where it failed to sell on a respectable 46 bids. It got the action, but it just wasn't in the neighborhood. And I will say this, and I'm curious to know what Derek thinks. I don't think 756 on 46 bids on BAT is the value of the car. I just feel like the audience wasn't willing to push to where the value of this car is. I do think this is $1 million car based on the rarity and how few of them are. And this car, has obviously been refurbished, and it does have some racing provenance. It is always difficult to value former race cars. But when you consider the low production numbers and how gaga Porsche guys are on that one statistic alone, I'd say with confidence that this should always be a $1 million car based on the market today. And that 750 really doesn't represent the result, even though that's where the bidding stopped. JP, what do you think when you see that 756 and FTS on 46 bids? Is there any part of you that thinks you should have taken that money, or do you kind of agree with me?
Yeah, I agree with you and Derek. I mean, I said it on the last episode too that I don't think anybody knows what it is.
True.
Derek mentioned the fact that really fine cars, really special stuff. The cars that you just never see are still doing really well, like the Mangusta that he just sold. But there's something about the Mangusta that when it doesn't matter who you are, and like it doesn't matter if you really don't know what that car is. When you see a picture of it, you instantly know that it's special. It just stands out as like, okay, I don't know what that is, but I need to find out because holy cow, right? This car, as beautiful and wonderful as it is and how special it is, it still doesn't look like it's special. And that's what I said on the last episode. As people are cruising through the listings on BAT, and we asked the question again at the beginning of the show, what the F is going on in BAT? I think one of the problems with BAT, for all the positive things about it, there's just so many cars on there that even special buyers, even special collectors, as they're swiping through, this car isn't going to get a second look because 90% of the people that see this car are just going to think it's an SC race car with some stuff on it. You really got to actually know what it is and stop and go, oh, right? I mean, it takes a second to. So this kind of car really does need to be in a live auction where people are in the room. They're people that have been vetted. They've got the money. They're drinking. And somebody up there can go, hey, this is. And everyone in the room already knows what it is because they've been previewing everything on the list and they're there to buy it. The Mangusta is the kind of car that someone that has that kind of special money, that guy on the yacht in the Mediterranean, he may not know he's shopping for one, but as he's scrolling through, that's going to grab your eye. This car just doesn't. Derek, what do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. The thing about like Porsches is that, especially on Bring a Trailer, the 73 Carrera is an iconic, recognizable car, and so those cars can get big numbers because a lot of people are like, I've always wanted one of those, and so you get the emotional response where people start to buy stuff because we're just like, I need this. I've always wanted one. This is the right one because it ticks all these boxes that are important to me. There's not a lot of guys out there who are like, SCRS, I need that. And may they not be on Bring a Trailer. It's entirely possible.
Yeah.
And so for the cars that are really recognizable, and I've noticed this trend generally, and this is the power of the internet, which is that you get a lot of eyeballs for sure, But there's a lot of guys who are, like you said, have started doing this in the last few years, and they're sort of just finding their way around. And I like those people because I'm happy to help them and sort of guide them and shepherd them. And I've been doing this now for like 20 years, and so it's a pleasure for me to help those types of people. But for the ones who are just starting out or still relatively green, a car like this is the appeal is not immediately obvious, and they need a little bit of initiation or sort of orientation. And you know, 10 days on Bring a Trailer is not enough to do that necessarily,
Yeah.
but if you get the guys who know it, then you get lucky, but it's a tough bet to make, or it's a tough thing to rely on.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Derek, one more thing. It's interesting. BAT had this car close on a Saturday, which was essentially yesterday, right? And it's a holiday weekend. Derek, based on your experience, do you, like, if your car is running, do you want your car to close on a Saturday, or do you want your car to close on a weekday? Do you think there's a quantifiable difference based on the hour or the day that the car closes? Do you think it makes a difference? I certainly do when it's NFL football. Like, I don't want my car closing on a Sunday during football season, but even in the off season, I think weekends are kind of the kiss of death. Would you agree with that at all?
I totally agree. I will not have any of my listings ever end on a weekend. I just won't do it. The Mangusta was supposed to end Monday. And I said, I don't want it to end Monday. I'd rather have a shorter auction that ends on a weekday than have it end on Monday, Memorial Day. And the consignor felt really strongly about it too. And I emailed them the morning of that, and they were like, it ends Monday. And I was like, no, absolutely not. I specifically did not want this to happen. And I'm very glad we did that.
Super smart.
How much pushback did you get on that, if any?
None. I was sure I wasn't going to hear anything from them, and it was just going to go, and I was just going to have to apologize to the consignor. But they were, to their credit, like within an hour of when it was supposed to go live, they were like, "Okay, we can move it. How about Friday?" And I said, "Great."
Yeah.
JP, that's a very impure answer. If you and I tried to do that, we'd get a ton of pushback. But Derek's a celebrity, you know what I mean?
Yeah. He's got a little bit more yank, right? They
a lot more yank.
All right, guys, what do you think of the? Oh, go ahead.
I've gotten the shaft from them before, for sure. Like the M3, they wouldn't let us run until some silver one with a sunroof had ended, and then they sort of cannibalized our M3 listing with another slick top with low miles at the same time. So, we got maybe a little bit of the suboptimal outcome with the M3, but it already did well enough. And fortunately, we got some sort of a hookup on the Mangusta, so I'll take it sometimes.
Yeah, it happens.
All right, what do you guys think of the result of this kind of rare and obscure 911 SCRS? Should the seller have taken the 750, or are they better off to wait till the summer and head down to Monterey and have a nice time? Schmooze with some people and drink some champagne and get more money for the car? Let us know what you think in the comments below. We're going to take a quick break. Shout out to some new friends. What's that? Oh, we got one more car?
But we'll just run through it.
Quick. I just want to shout out to all the new people who are hanging out in the chat. Like I mentioned before, if you haven't hit the thumbs up button, please do that and give us a subscribe. If you're hanging out to see Derek here, we welcome you to the show and being part of the Nerd Herd. We got new people like Ann and Riverside Blue and Ted and a bunch of people. So thank you very much for hanging out with us. Yeah,
David Sullivan's in the chat today. What's up, David?
Sullivan's not new. He comes around all the time. We
never see him, man, and he's shouting out in the comments. All right, JP, really quickly, Chris Carbine's sold a car in New Orleans, and it was a 2010 Lexus IS F. That's the one where they take the small platform sedan and stuff a big 5-liter V8 in it. This car was one of those weird ultrasonic blue mica, mostly unmodified. The guy that Carbine sold it to a few years ago has brought the car back to market on Cars and Bids, now showing 42,500 miles. And Carbine asked us to look at this car because it's a car he sold, and he knows the guy he sold it to, he knows, and he's trying to sell it. So he was hoping the bid nerds could give him some love. Our car was sitting at $32,000 when we looked at it, Derek. I thought it might get another 10 grand because the color is allegedly so special. I don't know if it's quantifiable like the Topaz Blue on the Z8 or the Laguna Seca Blue M3 you just sold at OTS and Company. But I thought that there might be some love for this car on Cars and Bids, and I think it's the right platform for this type of, quote unquote, lease return car. So I said 42.5. JP took the under at 40. Max said 38, and Buddha split the difference between them two at 39. Again, the car was at 32 when we looked at it. Derek, any love for the IS with the 5-liter, and what do you think the hammer was on Cars and Bids just a few minutes ago?
I mean, conceptually, I like the idea. This is like a Japanese C63, which is like big motor, small cars. So, like, definitely keen on the idea. I've never interacted with one up close, so I have no idea whether they actually sort of hold up to any kind of scrutiny. I'm sure it's graded burnouts, so you have to give it credit for that.
Basically,
your estimates are also clustered. I mean, like it's kind of all nearers makes no difference. But I mean, obviously, good colors always draw premiums. So I mean, this should be worth more than a sort of otherwise similar car on a less good color. So. I mean, I don't know. I really don't know the market on these cars, so
neither do we.
Call it 40.
40. Good guess.
Were we all wrong?
Yeah. And so what happened was this car only got like 1 or 2 more bids. It failed to sell at $32,500 on just 13 bids. Huh. What the hell, Doug DeMiro? I mean, you can't sell a weird car. Who can? Maybe we should have had Doug throw in a pair of his cargo shorts with this listing to help it cross the auction block. But no love, JP, for Chris Carbine's old car. So the bid goes on. Maybe the seller will bring the car back to Chris Carbine and put it on consignment at Carbine Motor Cars in New Orleans, Louisiana. JP, how about a word from our sponsors?
I think it's time. All right, we'll be right back, guys. Don't go away. Hey guys, I gotta tell you about our friends Godden Porsche of Las Vegas and Godden Classic. If you're looking for a new Porsche or a classic, you gotta call our friend Steve at Godden, this guy. Save yourself the hassle of screwing around with all the auctions like we always talk about and just talk to Steve. He'll find you the classic Porsche you're looking for, Godden Porsche of Las Vegas. Hey guys, you're probably looking at your watch and wondering if bid nerds will ever end. So you better talk to our friends at Our Smiths to make sure your Rolex, Tag Heuer, AP, or any fine timepiece is in tip-top shape. Our Smiths, fine Swiss repair. All right, you're looking at your watch going, hey, it's time for new predictions. We got Derek Tam Scott hanging out with us as the third nerd tonight, and we've got some interesting cars. All the cars tonight are suggestions from our Nerd Herd fans. So thank you guys for playing along in the Nerd Herd live with us and also sending us cars to review. It's a lot more fun when you guys send us cars than when we pick them, because what the hell do we know? All right, what's the first car on the list, Michael Deeb? I'm excited about this.
All right, JP. So Buddha spotted the very first 2024 Toyota new Land Cruiser. This is a first edition car, and it's on Bring a Trailer. So clearly here we have Derek. From time to time, we've covered some interesting cars where they're basically like sort of the first ones to market, and people rush them to an auction listing to see if they can make some money to help do a flip and put some money in their pocket for having landed one of the first ones for sale. So this is the new Land Cruiser. I don't know much about it, and honestly, I don't really care. But what I do want to tell you before I hand it over to you guys to talk about the car is that the MSRP on this car is $78,000. And we're wondering, Buddha especially was expecting that there was probably an addendum on this car. So if the MSRP on the window was $78,369, Buddha's thinking that if he got one of the first ones, and it's obviously a pretty new shade even for Toyota, that he might have paid $5,000 or $10,000 over for the privilege of landing one of the very first ones to drive off a lot somewhere in the United States. But without question, this is the first one to come to BAT, and clearly the guy who is selling it is speculating on the market for these and is trying to make a little money heading into summer. And so Buddha said maybe we should take a look at it and give it a quick review to see if anybody thinks that this guy's going to make some money, because Buddha, I think, is inclined to believe that he will. So JP, what do you know about this? This car only has 11 miles. It's on BAT up there in your neck of the woods in Seattle, Washington. Turbocharged 2.4 liter inline 4, 8-speed automatic transmission. Matte black wheels and a roof rack, pretty color. Jason did a show recently, and he talked about some of the new design language that's coming out of Toyota is really nice. And I actually like the lines and the proportions on this car. It does look a little bit like everything else, but there's not a lot of awkward pieces to this one to the eye. I like the way the car looks. I like it in this colorway. I even dig the all black wheels. I don't know if they're making these with a manual. I'd have to think if they did that there might be some demand for the manual, that could be a cool feature to have for a vehicle that looks like it could basically go anywhere. And when we get to the bidding, which we'll come back to the numbers, Derek, but I think, based on where the car's sitting and that it closes basically tomorrow, I think this guy is in line to put a couple bucks in his pocket. JP, what do you think when you look at the new Land Cruiser, and do you think this guy stands a chance to turn a profit, have some equity, even if he did pay an addendum?
Well, I mean, one thing that's going on in the regular car business right now is that, if you want a Ford truck or anything that CDRJ makes, that's Chrysler, Dodge, Ram, Jeep, or Hyundai or whatever, you can roll down to any dealership anywhere in America and pretty much get whatever you want, unlike a year or two ago. That is, except for a couple of brands, and that's Porsche, that is Toyota and Honda, and maybe one or two other special brands. But most car dealers and most car manufacturers have not only caught up with the increased demand, but now that demand has totally dropped on brand new cars, most manufacturers are having a real hard time moving cars. Toyota is one of the manufacturers that isn't. They have kept their production lean. They make more money on their cars when they sell them in other markets in the world. So the amount of cars that come to America is relatively few. When it comes to this particular car, I do like the design of the car. The style is cool. It's neat. It's definitely going back to that, boxier, more utilitarian, but yet modern kind of look that call it, that Wrangler's always had, that the Defender has always had, the original Defender, not the new one, and that, G-Wagons and stuff like that. And the
Bronco.
Yeah, thank you, the Bronco. But at $78,000, this thing's brand new, right?
Right?
I mean,
That's a
with
lot of
a
dough.
4-cylinder. Just a couple weeks ago, we had Andy's FJ Cruiser on here. This was a 2014. I'm just taking an opportunity to show off our photos again. I did represent this car for Andy. But here is probably the nicest FJ Cruiser that's been for sale in a long time. This is a 6-cylinder engine that will never break. This engine will go 400,000 miles or more. This has 3 pedals. This is the vehicle. I mean, this car only went for, what was it, 53? That saves you over, that's like $20,000-$30,000 in your pocket, and it's way cooler. And what's funny is that as we're looking at the pictures of this, stupid Land Cruiser, in the background, you see there is an FJ Cruiser in the background. Like, look at that. There's an FJ Cruiser back here. Look at that. You guys see it? It's up in the corner. It's like, the guy owns an FJ Cruiser. He's like, I'm just keeping the FJ Cruiser, and I'm going to unload this stupid thing. What do you think, funny. Derek? What do you think of these rigs?
I mean, the thing about these Toyotas generally is that they left the 4Runner alone for so long because it was selling well, and they don't depreciate. I mean, so I think there's this cult following. I mean, by the same token, FJ selling for 53, only, on one hand, but on the other hand, you're like, oh, it's a 10-year-old Toyota that, is selling for $53,000, which is just an absurd thing to say. So, I think this has the power. It has the sort of butch looks to continue down the path of the 4Runner and everything that sort of makes Toyotas worth what they are. And so I wouldn't be surprised if we made a little bit of money, especially because it's the first one on the ground and someone sees it and they like the configuration, and I don't have to wait around or deal with an ADM or negotiate anything. So I could see him making a little bit of money. Maybe I think it's 89.5.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We'll
so our numbers. He's ready to go. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all right. Let's get to the numbers because I don't want to talk about this thing too much. But
sorry.
Okay.
No, you're fine. It's all good. It was an advantage to go last.
Louvre 356 says that it's an anemic sounding Land Cruiser because of that motor. And JP, you had put up that one guy was talking about that he liked the design language because they kept the round headlights as a design cue. And I do,
sure.
They are noticeable. Nice little accent there. So JP, here to get back to the numbers on this car. So the MSRP was $78,000. Basically 11% for tax and tags. So this guy's add $8,000 to that. So you're looking at, $86,000 to take that car home. So is he going to make money from $86,000? Our car is sitting at $75,500 on just 12 bids, and our car closes tomorrow out of Seattle, Washington on Bring a Trailer. JP, I think he is going to make some money. And so from the 86, I'm going to give you $96,000 where I think it will sell. the name just carries too much weight. I think the color's pretty in that in this colorway. Some of these like sort of soft flat colors that they've been doing, pastel and military greens and grays and blues of this are totally in vogue, and Toyota is leading the way in that. And the white roof and some of the design elements, I think it works. I think it goes. I think this guy's going to make some money, and eventually supply will catch up with demand. But this guy's first to the key. I think he's going to win. So $96,000, JP, to you. Where are you at?
Derek, where were you at again? I'm sorry, you said 90?
He said 89.
89 and a half.
89. Okay, well then I'll do that. I'll hop in at 90. I think it's going to be basically someone's going to go, hey, I have a deposit on one. Here's one sitting there. I'll just buy this one, and when mine comes around, or I'll just let it go to the next buyer. I just don't think there's. I think that these are in demand. People want them, but I don't think people are going to pay over. I think it's going to be really tough for anyone to pay over these days. So let us know what you guys think. Let's hear. In the nerd herd, we got Anthony's at like 88 and Michael 89. He's with Derek. Yeah, everyone's kind of in that 80, 90. Chris Carbine's up there at 95. I think he says it fails to sell. I don't know. It's it'll be interesting.
95 and a fail to sell is interesting. That's no, he says fall into place regardless of the. I don't know.
Oh yeah, man, I don't know what. Sorry, I read that wrong. But
I did
anyways.
Too.
Yeah, let's move on. I got to tell you, though, there's no way in hell I would buy this over that FJ Cruiser. Let's take an opportunity to look how pretty that FJ Cruiser is one more time. Look at that. Better than the photos from Toyota. All right, moving on. What else we got, Michael D?
JP, we have selected a 2017 Porsche 991.2 Targa 4S. So now all the Targas are all-wheel drive. But this is an S specification, so that's a 3-liter twin turbocharged motor that's making about 420 horsepower and like 370 pound-foot of torque, channeled through a PDK, a 7-speed dual clutch transmission. These contemporary Targas have a beautiful Targa bar that harkens back to the original long hoods and G bodies that made the Targa popular. That was slightly carried over on the 964. But the 993s and the 996s sort of lost their way with the Targas. But the 991s came back strong, and these cars have sold well for Porsche. Our car is on P-Car Market. It is showing 63,000 miles, and it's located down in Malibu, California. So the question, JP, is, how is P-Car Market going to screw this up? This is an interesting car, John. I do sort of feel like P-Car Market should be able to sell this car and achieve a retail number for it. But this presentation, John, is trash to me. This photography is terrible. It looks to me like it was done with a cell phone by the consignor. Look at that. Jesus.
Nice frosted tips, bro.
Is that
Selvage LaDouche?
Yeah. Is that Vanilla Ice? Is that Ice Baby? Like,
it's a certain Ferrari owner from Las Vegas.
Yeah, so I was right. This was done by the consignor on a cell phone, and the photos, I think he's let himself down. A car that is basically close to $100,000, although this one does have some miles on it. It deserves somebody go out and spend a few $100s and get professional photography done, get the car detailed correctly, take a clay bar to it and get all the swirl marks out. You've got a black car. You got one chance to make a first impression. You've already started off on the wrong foot by going to a questionable site. I just think this car, JP, despite it being, arguably a no-nonsense car that would be in high demand at this time of the year across the country, I suspect this car is DOA. So, John, I just take this soup sandwich and dump it on your lap and begin to apologize. But you deal with this. I don't think this car's going anywhere. What do you think?
What? Okay, P-Car Market. What is it that you guys do for the money? That's what I want to know. You get somebody that calls you up, I want to sell my car, bro. And they send you a listing like this. Okay, shout out to Tom Amenta. His DM to me was like, hey, here's a car you should cover. And one photo will stand out. And I showed you that you could see the guy with his frosted tips and the photos and everything. Yeah. But as I'm going through the photos, so I'm looking for one that stands out, right? And sure enough, I'm like, holy shish. Check out this photo, guys. You guys are going to this is a new one. Mofo's eating a fucking sandwich.
The seller says his name is Buzz. We're missing the most important thing.
What's his name?
There's Buzz.
Buzz is having a sandwich.
Buzz.
He can't be bothered
Yeah.
to put down his
That's a-
fucking egg McMuffin to take a
that's a
picture
Twinkie.
of his stupid car.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's just too
Oh
much
my God.
work, man. I mean, there's
Oh
a
my
beverage
God.
here, bro. It's like P-Car Market. Come on, what do you got? Somebody somewhere in the damn office is looking at all these pictures. And go approved. Sandwich, yeah, fine. Approved. It's like, come on, do something, do anything,
Yeah.
because give me a reason not to have to go.
Yeah.
P-Car Market sucks over and over again. I'm
Oh
getting
my
tired of this.
God.
Everyone's getting bored of this. Derek, what the F is going on at P-Car Market? What do you think of this? What would you do if you saw this?
I mean, it's just this whole thing is super underwhelming to me.
I don't even give an F about the car.
It's an underwhelming color combination. It's got the wrong transmission. It's not a GTS. It's just like sandwich, you know? It's just sandwich.
Is that
And
like
I'd rather have the sandwich.
Is that like, what do they call the McScramble or something like that from
Yeah,
McDonald's that totally gives you
Yeah.
diarrhea? I mean, this is just
Yeah. Oh my
unbelievable. It's just like, come on, dude. What is going to
Jesus.
happen with this listing? I mean, we all know this is going straight to the chum bucket. But yeah, how much does the idiot think he's going to get for this car? And
All right.
yeah, because I don't want to hang out too much. Because I mean, who cares? It's a nice car. It's a Targa. The PDK version of it, though, is like whatever. This is run of the mill modern Porsche.
This is a country club car for basically like a PCA guy, JP.
Who can't afford the country club, so he goes to McDonald's to get his McGriddle.
Yeah, seriously. So our car is sitting at $30,019. Can't tell you what the significance of the $19 is. That's on just 3 bids, and our car closes basically 3 days from now. So our car closes on Wednesday. JP, I'm going to give you $68,000 where it will fail to sell. And I think this car winds up in the chum bucket for, $85,000, $90,000 when it FTS is on Wednesday. But $68,000, I do think it'll get a few more bids. More and more P-Car Market's bids are all coming in on the last day. They show no signs of life until the car is ready to close. And I think that's because of years of negative reinforcement that if you bid on a car as a low underbidder, your deposit is held for basically a week or two before you get your money back, even though you know you're not going to win because you were never intending to bid a retail number for the car. You're just it's like a vanity thing. And now they've scared all the vanity people off their site. So we can't read the tea leaves based on the action prior to the closing day because there is no action. So John, 68 to you. I do think it'll get it there, but even in the 60s, I don't think this car will sell. I'm sure the owner is overvaluing the car and is expecting 80 plus for it. 68 to you, John. Where you at?
Yeah, I mean, shout out to Riverside Blue, who may have made the best comment in the chat of all time. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. There's no doubt about that. I guess he's right. So this car is going to bring all the money now. This seller is another guy. He's got a deposit on a new C8 or something like that. So he thinks this thing's going to bring $130,000. So that's probably what it's going to be in the chum bucket. But I don't think it's going to break $60,000.
You don't?
So yeah, I think so. I'll just say $60,992. And hand it off to Derek. What do you think?
I mean, this is one of those situations where my tastes diverge so much from the public. I find black and black to be underwhelming. I find PDK to be like a minus. I find four-wheel drive to be a minus. Turbocharging is a minus. But like all the guys who are out there buying these cars, they don't give a shit. And so I think it actually has some mainstream appeal. I mean, the presentation is abysmal. There's a bunch of cosmetic stuff that should have been fixed to present a car like this. But, it's 62,000 miles. It's a used car. Yeah. So, I think it's, I don't know, 70 on the dot.
70 on the dot.
On the dot.
And does it sell at your number, Derek?
No. This guy is clearly just living on his own planet. The sandwich
and
says
what's
everything
P-Car
you need to
Market
know.
going to do about it? They're not going to argue with the guy. They're not going to they're just going to be like, okay, great, let's do this. Let's get some deposit money in for a while that we can go play at the slots down the street in Atlantic City.
JP, there's an unbelievably good comment in the CS is the handle on our thing. It says, this car looks like every Turo rental 911 in Miami.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the
It's
best.
so
That's such a great.
nondescript.
Probably
So
smells
good.
like it too, with the with a little
Absolutely.
bit
That
of
may
whiff
too.
of
Maybe
egg
it has Turo history.
Yeah. What's that?
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
thing
that's
could
true.
have Turo history.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, well,
Run
you
the
know,
bin through Turo.
the McDonald's French fries, they don't rot; they just go under the seat. Rest in peace,
For
Morgan
safekeeping.
Spurlock. He just died, didn't he? The guy that
Sound deadening.
Yeah, exactly. All right, what do you guys think this 991 Targa car will bring? Will it bring anything? How badly will P-Car Market screw it up? Would you put down your sandwich to take a picture of your car to try to sell it, or do you think that's just, I mean, that nutrition in the morning is just too darn important? You got to get that meal in. Maybe maybe he was intermittently fasting and he wasn't thinking straight because of all the low T. I don't know. This just has oof.
He was power eating for Ramadan. He had to be
Yeah. with the frosted tips. All right, let us know in the comments below. We're moving on. What else we got?
All right, JP, we have a 1997 Ferrari 355 Spider with a 6-speed manual transmission, also on Brigade Trailer. Our car is located in Phoenix, Arizona, and is currently showing 34,000 miles. Obviously, the big news here is that we're talking about a manual car. It is in resale red, Rosso Corsa over tan. This is what, every every nouveau riche Ferrari guy wants. Interesting car, JP, because, just a couple of years ago, you could have picked up this car for $80,000. But gated manuals, especially from this era, from the DeMontezemolo era, have truly gone through the roof. And while the coupes are now bringing $250,000, the tide rises all ships, JP, and these cars are now over 6 figures. Especially when you consider reasonable miles and, let's say, a clean Carfax, and a very relatable color. And red over tan is, about as cliche or as iconic, depending on who you ask, in the Ferrari form. A lot of times the values on these cars, the final value is determined by the most recent belt service. I am not seeing that in the listing, which is always kind of weird when they don't just offer it up in the first paragraph that, this car has had a major service. And then given, at least a month and a year, so you could sort of estimate, or a mileage, something like that. So I'll continue to search to see if I can find it. I'm sure somebody would have asked him in the comments. But John, I've
February
driven
23.
one of these cars. Thank you. So that's recent enough. So the belts are done. So this car should look to the, closer to the retail end of it. Being a clean car, and like I said, it might not be the color you or I would want, but I think it's the color that the septuagenarian that's shopping for this car might. If there's a younger guy out there that's come into some money and this is sort of an attainable Ferrari for him, I just wonder if that young guy wants red on tan. It's interesting to say that with the proliferation of the values of rare shades, that younger guy might want a green one, or I don't know, a yellow one, or a blue one, or a burgundy one, and might not want red or tan because that's the color his uncle would drive. So I just wonder if red tan on a fun car like this isn't the kiss of death. So I send it to you, JP. Belts, clean car, reasonable miles, and this is a fantastic driving car as far as the revs and the horsepower. I mean, this is a truly thrilling car that would spank a similar year Porsche, either a 993 turbo or a 964 turbo. Would have to work really hard to keep up with these cars, because these cars the performance was actually there. Ferrari kind of missed the mark with the 348, but they came back strong with this sort of .2 of that platform. So JP, what do you think of this car? What do you think of the colorway, and what do you think of the presentation?
Yeah, I mean, the presentation is pretty lousy. I mean, it's just kind of run-of-the-mill photos, clearly with a cell phone or something like that. There's just no romance.
There's no sandwiches.
Here. No, it's certainly better than the last guy on P-Car Market.
Right?
It is without breakfast, so I don't know. I'm a little bit upset about that. Yeah, I've always wanted one of these, and dang it, you get a coupon for Burger King breakfast. But I've just always been scared away from them just because of the reputation they have for just being total maintenance hogs. This is definitely the enthusiast car that you have, as well as another enthusiast car or a couple other enthusiast car. This probably isn't the enthusiast car that you get first. unless you want a lot of heartache. And I think a lot of people get into these because the barrier to entry isn't crazy. I mean, we'll get to the numbers here, but it's nowhere near what a new Ferrari, call it, like a 458 or a newer, era car. But I think this is one of the most beautiful cars ever made, honestly, by Ferrari. I just absolutely love these things. And I couldn't care what color the car is. But they're just, I think a lot of people get lured into them because of their beauty, and they wind up getting rid of them quick when they get that first service bill at the Ferrari store or the Ferrari guy that works on them. It's just so heavy. Derek, what do you think of these?
I am sort of an outspoken critic of these cars. I think they're gorgeous. I will absolutely agree with you. I think it's one of the best looking mid-engine Ferraris ever. And it's kind of all downhill from there. The roof is a pain in the ass to deal with. They drive differently when they have no roof because they're not as rigid. Everybody loves the flat plane noise. It doesn't, for me personally, do that much. And then I think the really regrettable part of these cars is they're just not very well made. You get in the interiors and you're just like, man, they wear age poorly. A lot of stuff kind of looks cheap and gross when it's not beautiful, which happens when they hit 11,000 miles. And the other thing about this, I mean, if we're going to transition into talking about the specific car, it's a kind of, we refer back to my comment about repeatability. This is a pretty repeatable car. It's a red tan Spider. It's not the top of the desirability heap. It's not a like, holy shit, when am I going to find another one just like this? It's going to sort of have to trade right at the market value, or maybe fall a little flat if the right people aren't there that day. So I want to like these cars, but I think dynamically and also just the quality, they're just always kind of a letdown for me every time I interact with one. And then you add on, it's super expensive to maintain. Oh yes, perfect. Sign me the fuck out. Sorry.
Yeah. I've told the story before on the show. Like I've been very close to buying one of these, and this was back in the mid-aughts, and I had financing lined up. I had the car. I was buying the car, and I was basically going down to the dealership the next day, and I called one of my buddies that actually owns one. Looked identical to this one, and I'm like, okay, for real, how bad is the maintenance? Is it really as bad as? And I was kind of thinking, oh, it's just overblown. Just everyone just talks about it, but no, he's like, yeah, the lowest bill I've ever gotten when I've brought the car in for any service at all was $13,000. That was the lowest bill, and at the time, the car was like $70,000. So I was like,
Yep.
I'm that's
I'm out.
different. I'm out. Yeah, I can't do that. That was So it's like pretty much every time you go there, you buy a Honda Civic. Got it. I'll stick with Porsches for a while. Thank you very much. All right, what do we think this car will bring? Do we think it'll bring anything? Is it going to sell? What's going on, Michael Deeb?
Yeah, JP, this is really interesting. So our car is sitting at just $40,250. Our car closes tomorrow on Bring a Trailer out of Phoenix, Arizona. It's on 15 bids. JP, on paper, this should be, close to $125,000, $150,000 car. But there's something so repeatable, to borrow Derek's vernacular, about this car that I'm just not feeling it. There's nothing in this car that screams that it's special, despite having the manual and, again, just sort of fair miles. So I'm struggling to see, just reading the tea leaves, if this car is even going to break 100. And it absolutely should, but I don't know if it will. The average selling price, according to classic.com, for a car like this is around $94,000. Haggerty's implying that this car, even if we sort of hit it hard and say it's just a number 3 condition, it should bring $106,000. I'm not feeling either of those two numbers, but I'm going to go somewhere in between and say, for some reason, I don't think this car breaks $100,000. It's a 1997, so I'm going to give you $97,355 for my bid to be cutesy. And at my number, John, I think it fails to sell. And I just don't know what he did wrong. He shot in the golden hour. It's a red tan Ferrari. It's got a manual, but I can't explain it. I just don't think this one's going to get there. This should be a $120,000 car in today's market, but I just don't feel like this one's going to get there, and I can't explain why. JP, to you, $97,355 is my bid. Where are you?
Yeah, I mean the photos here. If I took the photos, or if Derek took the photos, or Lee or whatever, we'd be
Yeah.
talking about a much different scenario. If this car was presented like the Mangusta was, and they took care of just some of those little details, detailed it better, took care of a couple of those little rock chips, and just show a little bit of romance, my man. You get that $120 for this car. I think someone wants this. This is the experience that someone's looking for. The service having been done recently is great. But the fact that the photos are taking in a crappy parking lot right up against the containment wall there, and that it's just poorly represented means this car. I mean, we're seeing, look, the F1 transmission ones aren't even bringing 70 grand at this point. We're back down to kind of like 2019 numbers on these things. So the 6-speed is a big deal. This car should be $120, but I'm with you. I don't think it's going to even break 100 because there's nothing special about this. There's there's just no romance. I want to fall in love, and I just can't. So yeah, you said 97 355.
Yeah,
I will go 95 355 and hand it off to Derek.
All right, Derek, give us
I
your
think
number.
you're spot on. I mean, the listing just has no sizzle.
Yes.
And that's exactly what you need, especially with a repeatable car, right? You have to at least sell the romance of this particular example with good photography, and it doesn't do that. I mean, there was one that had 40,000 miles, so a little bit more than this car, but it had I think it was current on belts and same combo, Spider 6-speed, and it sold for 93,355. So I don't think this car could break 100 even on a great day. Maybe it tickles like 100, but I think it's right around 100 at best. But with this indifferent presentation, I think that it R&M at 85, and I think the car's market value is like 95, 96.
Yeah, you don't even think it's worth
Okay.
over 100.
Yeah.
I
So 85 reserve not met. That's a strong take, JP. He's betting against the. He doesn't think this one stands a chance.
well,
I
what
mean,
about
the presentation is just so meh.
yeah?
Yeah, I agree.
We had Max Vincenzi from Retroworks Garage on the last episode, and one thing he mentioned, he's like, he likes seeing a listing that has poor photography because to him it represents the potential for getting a deal. And so if this seller is reasonable and does actually want to sell it and has a reserve low enough that he's like, look, I just have to sell it. This might be a great way for someone to steal this car because the seller is leaving money on the table. So and I'm kind of with Max. If I'm looking for cars, I'm looking for any way I can get a break on that money as I can. So this might be a way to sneak in there and get something out from underneath other potential bidders. But what do you guys out there in the nerd herd think? Looks like Tom Amenta's up there at 95. Everyone else is kind of like under that. Max, he's at 62. Where's it at now? How high is it? It's at 40 something.
It's at $40,250.
Yeah, boy, I'm really rethinking. And how many days does it have left on it?
It closes tomorrow.
We totally overbid. I should have gone 80 because I mean, is it going to more than double? That's what it'd have to do in order for me to get where I'm at. But at least I'm under you.
On paper, this car should be worth over 100 grand, and again, none of us are seeing it at all.
Yeah.
JP, we're like, we kind of caught back up on our schedule. Can we just wiggle in one more car?
All right, let's wedge it in there. Let's do it.
All right. And I picked this one for you, Derek, because I bet this is a car you'd get a kick out of. On Bring a Trailer right now, John, is a 1994 Lancia Delta Integrale Evo 2. Our car is in Miami, Florida, and is showing 154,000 kilometers, which is about 96,000 miles. The Evo 2 is a turbocharged 2-liter with a 5-speed manual transmission, limited slip differential. Evo 2s had an evolved seat and a couple of more horsepower, but the Evo 1s and the Evo 2s are actually very similar. Super cool car. This is a homologation special to one of, if not the most successful World Rally Championship car of all time. You know, as young guys here in the room, we all love homologation specials, and this must be one of the most iconic of all time. How can you not think of cars from the 80s and 90s and get a kick out of boxed fender flares, like an E30 M3 or a 944, or in this case, the almost cartoonish fenders in the front and rear of this Evo 2, an incredible car. And Evo 2s are the last of the breed of these cars, and arguably among the best. Some purists might like some of the earlier cars that don't have quite the same spec, but might have more feel depending on how familiar you are. Essentially, these cars are gray market cars, but they're being brought in. Derek, I'm sure you're familiar with Marco Marini down here in the South Bay, who's been bringing in Integrales for years and slapping Vermont plates on them and giving them to Californians all day long. I don't think this is one of his cars because it's not on a green plate from Vermont. But the interesting thing that we're going to look at here, JP, is a lot of these cars come in and have, you know, anywhere between 30 and 60,000 miles on it. But this one's got nearly 100,000 miles. So it's been run, it's been used. And it's not like you're going to find a really good Lancia or even Fiat technician on every street corner. If you want to own one of these cars, you kind of need to be near a major city where you might find an Italian tech who could take a car on like this and source parts to keep you on the road. But I think they're fantastic driving cars, and this one with the miles could represent a really good value to get into what most people will recognize as a over $100,000 car. But I just don't think this one's going to get there with the miles. Red and tan, great seats, all-wheel drive, turbo. You could, you know, swap the turbo on this and get easily over 300 horsepower to the tires. These cars handle really good right out of the box. I dig it, and I've always kind of wanted one, and this one I just thought was interesting. So, JP, I sent it over to you before we let Derek tell us more about the car that we might not know. You know, what do you think? Would you, if the money was equal, would you choose this over an E30 M3 just to be different?
I like that sentiment, but no, these cars don't do anything for me. I know everyone's going to be like, oh, I mean, look, I get it. It's awesome. I've never driven one. I'm sure it's fantastic, but it's just not on a list for me to ever buy. I mean, I totally appreciate that this car is loved and that so many people love them. But yeah, it's just, I got to pass. What do you think, Derek?
An economy of words.
That was
sorry,
very enthusiastic response.
Whoopity doo.
Yeah. Derek, I forgot to tell you, JP's got a dinner reservation, so could you wrap it up?
Okay.
No, I'm kidding.
Let's expedite.
He's kidding. Yeah, no, we're good.
These cars, to me, I want to like them a little more than I do. I do like them, but not as much as I want to. I mean, the sort of forbidden fruit and the rally homologation thing, and, you know, they won the World Rally Championship 6 times, more than any other car. Yep. They're immensely successful. They're really special. They're really fun to hustle. You know, if you're not hustling, though, it's a little bit of an underwhelming car. They're like, the motors don't sound that good. The interiors are just absolute crap, honestly. I mean, even cars with 50,000 kilometers, it's like... You know, I can't take credit for what I'm about to say, but one of my friends calls these, you know, not Integrale, but disintegrale. I mean, the interiors are just junk. And so the idea of 154,000 kilometers, I mean, 54,000 kilometer cars like this sometimes are kind of sketchy. Yeah. So it scares me a little bit. It's an icon, but... And maintaining it is a pain in the ass. I mean, it might be worse than a 355 even. And Whoa. It's so easy to spend huge amounts of money and time. They are great, I don't know, 7th or 8th cars. You know, it's not a second, third, or fourth car. You got to have 7 other cars before you have one of these. And that's kind of the expectation with uptime in the United States. I owned one, and like, getting the windshield for it was like a 6-month ordeal that cost $1,000, even though the windshield itself was 120 euros because of insurance and freight and customs and all that stuff. It's just, you really got to be committed to own one of these in the US. So, you know, I like them, and I like driving them, but they're best when they belong to somebody else, and I'm just borrowing it.
That's so funny. I was going to say that. Smart. It's like, if one of these showed up to Cars and Cafe, I would happily give them a really premium spot, and I would smile as they drove away, but I wouldn't be like, oh man, I really wish that was going home to my way. All right, what do we think this car will bring? And the fact that this one looks like it was restored, but kind of in someone's garage, maybe not so. Was it done well? I don't know. There's a lot of missing information in here, or at least we haven't done our homework. We never do.
Right.
So digging into this listing would hopefully give us more information that I think you would need before you confidently made a bid on this. What do we think it's going to bring based on what little we do know?
Yeah, JP. First of all, the photography is garbage, which is a bummer. The photos are really grainy or out of focus. I can't tell which because I'm half blind, but it's not a good presentation. And somebody did spend some money to sort of bring this car back. So despite the miles, I don't know if they did the motor or not. But what's interesting is our car, which is in Miami, Florida, is only at $8,000 and it closes in 3 days. So this car is not getting the love, and I don't know if it's the mileage. I don't know if it's the presentation. I don't know if it's the fact that it's been completely repainted, if that's what's scaring people away, but the outlook does not look good. I'm going to give you a bid of $58,000 where I think it will fail to sell, because I think this guy's looking for 80,000 plus for his, basically restored Evo 2, which is supposed to be a pretty special car. But I don't think he's going to get anywhere near the number he's looking for. No matter where it hammers, I'm guessing this car is going to FTS, reserve not met. But my bid, John, is going to be 58 grand. I don't know where he's going to get another $50,000 in the next 3 days, but I suspect that's kind of the range where the bidding will stop. But even at my number, I don't think it stands a chance to sell. I think the guy wants way more money for it because he went out of his way to show you everybody he repainted the car. So JP, 58 grand to you. Give me your bid.
Yeah, I'm with you. This thing's DOA. I'm going to go 45 and also FTS. For that money, you could get the nicest Mark II GTI, and I'd way rather drive one of those than this thing. Even though I'm sure this car's better from a performance point of view, at least I know I'm getting where I'm going in that little Volkswagen. Derek, what do you think?
These are cars that are magical to drive at 10 tenths and then kind of unremarkable otherwise. And so if you're going to do that, it's great. But I think that this car bids to 35 and doesn't sell. And I think it's worth 45.
Oh, wow.
Hey, let's see here. We've got somebody had a question for you, Derek. Would you represent this car if the buyer reached out to you? And if so, what would you do to help them along?
I make them do it no reserve.
Yeah.
Yep.
And pay a photographer. God damn it!
Brilliant. They're smart. Yeah.
I present the hell out of it and highlight all the stuff that's been done. And I probably would do it, but I would have asked them to be super reasonable about the reserve, and I would also want it to not be needing shipping, and I would also want them to have a Carrera GT that they would also let me sell as well.
Yes.
Then I would say yes.
Yeah.
So if it's bundled with something else, you're in, but on its own, you're like, I got better things to do. I see how you are.
Yep.
Okay.
Promise of happier returns.
Yeah.
Because Derek's gonna have to bend over backwards to get this car across the finish line.
What does this guy do when it fails to sell on BAT? What's next for him at this point? Is he basically just stuck with it?
I would have run it no reserve and presented the hell out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying.
Neither of those things has happened.
Yeah, so in this particular situation, if we are reading the tea leaves correctly, and tomorrow when this thing closes, it get
3 days.
Or 3 days, sorry. In 3 days when this thing closes and it fails to sell, like we predict, what does this guy do next? Is he just basically stuck? Is he going to have to go throw it on Auto Trader or something like that? Or Facebook Marketplace? What does he do? How do you get rid of something like this?
Put it on Hemmings for $49.50 and have it be the cheapest Integrale you can buy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or run it again no reserve with better photos, ideally.
Or take some pictures with a McGriddle. You get some breakfast with it, then maybe it sells. I don't know. All right, what do you guys think this Integrale will bring? Will it bring anything? Is it DOA like we kind of think? Or are we just wrong? Maybe the seller is reasonable. Maybe he got it maybe he knows, and he's just like, yeah, man, if I get 40 grand for it, that'd be awesome. Maybe he bought, it probably says how long he's had it. But if he's had it for 10 years, maybe he bought it cheap and 40 grand would be a profit to him. Who the heck knows? It'll be interesting to see what happens. And maybe we can answer the question, what the F is going on Bring a Trailer. All right. Thanks you guys for hanging out with us. Derek, where can we find you if we want to follow you on all the socials and all the things?
The best place is Tam Scott on Instagram, or you can follow the business account, which is OTS and Co, or OT Sandco if you prefer to read it the wrong way. We got to get a bucket of sand for the door. Anyway, the social media, that's Instagram's probably the best way.
Very nice. We'll try to get some links down there below. And if you guys want to sell your car on Haggerty, who does not pay us for they pay Michael Deeb to sell cars, but they don't pay us to do it on Bid Nerds here. How does somebody do that, Michael Deeb?
Hey JP, just direct message me through the through our Instagram account. Reach out, let us know what kind of car you have, and I can reach back out and discuss it with you. We are taking consignments for our live auction coming up at Monterey, at the Monterey Jet Center as part of the Motor Lux event. I think I'm allowed to share that, JP, we used to do the Motor Lux event on Wednesday, and then we would have our auction on Thursday and Friday. But we've realized that why miss out on the opportunity to sell some early young timer cars to this great crowd where everybody's drinking on Wednesday night. So Wednesday night will be the first night of our auction where we'll sell about a third of our lots. Most of them will be young timer cars from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And then we'll have the big auction and the balance of our cars done on Thursday afternoon. So we are taking consignments. If you have a really exceptional car, reach out and let's talk about it and see if we can get you into that live auction.
All right. Patootie says, thanks for watching, guys. We will see you on the next episode, which will be Wednesday night. Derek, you can come back and slum with us again?
Yeah.
I would love to come back sometime. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thanks for being
Fantastic.
here. Fantastic.
Thank you, Derek. Thank you
guys.
very much.
Bye.